we have that choice. We actually have that choice to wake up. Like, what will it take to wake you up? What will it take to wake us
to keep
up?
waking up.
And keep waking. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah.
That's like a cultural shift too.
Yeah.
To start to be one of taking self-responsibility, saying, hey, this is where I've been projecting this onto these other people. I'm willing to...
That's what takes that, like, looking at oneself in the mirror. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
It does.
And that's the challenge, I think, right now. For people.
That is the
collectively.
challenge.
And with collective reinforcement. So,
right.
Like,
that's something I'm deeply missing from at least my idealism with tribalism is like that there's one story that we're all working towards together. We have an origin story. We came from the same stars or whatever it is. Like, I think we've got such different stories, and then we're arguing over, like, for me, I wrote this paper in college around the American dream being dead, and it's still not something that's talked about very much. The orientation that we have as Americans is towards finding something that we're good at and then doing that and then being able to afford a good life and happiness, and that dream is kind of dead because it's ignoring our place in the ecosystem. Like, that's a selfish dream. That does not lead to our future children's children.
But I think that's also a story. The more we can recognize our shared humanity, I think the more we have opportunity to heal.
The more we can recognize our shared humanity, the more opportunity there is to heal. Yeah. Okay, so just sharing on this point, I think it's really important, is like, we can't look up and wait for the same leaders to make the decisions that are actually going to be empowering of all of us creating this healed world that we've dreamed of for so long, that's fair. We can't keep complaining about it. That isn't going to work right now. And the lockdowns will become tighter. The restrictions will keep growing until the point, I'm just intuiting this, that it triggers our soul to actually rise up and do something, rise up and meet ourselves. That's what's perfect about what's happening, is even though it seems like things are getting shittier and shittier, things had to get shitty enough for you to wake up. Things had to get shitty enough for me to wake up, or is present enough and meaningful enough because your family's like, at what circle does it matter? Like, if it's
But if you wake up into another dream, unfortunately there's a lot of that too, right? Like with woke culture, right?
Okay, speak on that, actually. Speak on that.
Well, I just think part of, that's why I always say, like I said, always waking, never woke. Because it's that vigilance, that's needed.
Right.
Which I think is, again, I think when we're so divided and everybody's like, and caught up in shame and, you're this, or, you don't know my experience because of this.
Right.
And that's really, that was really part of the, part of the pandemic was going into that, right?
Right.
It went from keep locked down, right?
Yeah.
Keep divided to, nope, now we can come out and rage and division, it's quite eloquent. Or I don't know if eloquent's the word, you know what I mean? But it's very strategically done in a way as to divide.
Yeah, I wonder if it's really playing out, like if it's a chess game to the degree we seem to sometimes believe it is. As if like there are these sort of like, cronies at the top, like planning this way that it's going to unfold. Yeah, if you need support, you got it. Okay, got it. Okay, cool.
I would grab it if I needed it. Right. I'd grab you.
Good. But like, I wonder, it might just... Yeah, the question is like, actually, it's not the real question. Like, they may or may not be planning this whole thing in order to subvert the people
But the people are subverted when they're divided.
That is true, and it's been used by corporations for a long time, like in unions, right? They used to purposely hire different ethnicities, races, because they knew that that racial divide would ensure that they would never unite up against the corporate rulers, right?
I think one thing right now is the shadow, is actually witnessing the shadow, because it's being really like splayed out. But I still think people will get caught up in idealistic views.
Yep.
And that, I think, is what the woke culture is too, right? It's like, oh, because, it's always moving. It's always, nothing is, it's all...
It's not, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of it's in a flux. When it's like in a state of flux.
The non-duality, duality flux.
Yeah, like
ooh, yeah, that's an important piece.
But I think that, again, to bring that out at like the meta level too, that, here and now, I think that comes down to us witnessing our own capacity for evil. You know what I mean? Like our own capacity to do wrong and to do bad and...
Right, not to project it all out.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's them, not us.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are doing that and they're acting in atrocious ways against their fellow men.
Right, even yes, right. I saw that at the protest I was part of at Shop.
Yeah.
All the time. It was like...
Well, and destroying, it's like this whole thing of like being for one thing and then destroying, people's business. You know what I mean? Just destroying.
Yeah. It's not embodying the peace. It's like, now it's time for them.
Well, because that's the shadows not being recognized, and when it's not recognized and put in check, it devours, And I think that's that devouring.
So it's going to take like a massive leap of maturity for people who have been disenfranchised, truly.
And for people not to to recognize, like, I think a friend of mine said it really well, is all humans experience pain maximally. Because there's so much to say, like, you don't know, that's that divide.
Right.
But we all do experience pain maximally. So the more we can recognize our shared humanity, I think the more we have opportunity to heal.
The more we can recognize our shared humanity, the more opportunity there is to heal. Yeah. Sebastian, Brother Sebastian, wisdom, Brother Jamie. Any thoughts to add to this discussion?
I'm in a tricky in-between place, I think, with a lot of thoughts getting thrown around. I'm realizing how disoriented I am in this maze of mind and the Russian dolls that I exist within. And for me, I'm recognizing that how much I am a part of the problem. I like the idea of this mind virus that even when I identify it, I think sometimes we make the mistake of once it's been identified, we're no longer a part of that thing. But very much I've internalized the problem. I am the construct that is the thing I'm fighting against, that I'm trying to dissolve using the thing that's still broken, and recognizing that just because I've identified it, there's still so much work to do. And in so many ways, I see a lot of people trying to clean up the mess and making things messier. They've got more mud on their hands than the mud that they're picking up. And it's just and then they're arguing over who's more disillusioned. And so for me, I'm taking this opportunity to see something on the outside and not even again, it's almost there's some hypocrisy even in pointing it out of even my own words. I could pick myself apart. I'm wanting to retreat a little bit. I think I'm glad that there's some people that are really empowered to use their voice and stand up for something. And I also think that a lot of people in my generation are lacking the humility of shutting up and just listening and watching for a while. For me, I'm wanting to retreat and detoxify from being the problem a little bit. I'm wanting to go buy land with my privilege and grab my family and some friends and start to drink a lot of clean water and breathe a lot of good air.
But is that part of that same problem when you devalue yourself as your privilege? Kind of like what you said about the garden.
I'm just inoculating the argument that is clear.
Well, I know, but I'm saying that layer on top of that, how also too, when you said about you making the video, your garden that you've worked hard on to grow, you're a human being. Yeah. But then to say, oh, us white, we're just doing it. I mean, it's kind of it's playing into the same.
I'm saying there's nowhere we can go that's not going to cross some lines at some point. It's so there's this convoluted mess, and clearing it up is just really interesting. But for me, I feel really, for me, the solutionary response is just really closing these feedback loops. The things that are keeping me warm are trees that I chop down. I've made that dent. the food that I'm eating is food that I raised, hunted, or somebody that I know did. Like, I want those closed loop systems, so I have like direct feedback on my impact and the things that are impacting me. And that way, when I'm looking back at this government thing and who's leading, I'm like, it's like, how is that directly affecting these closed loops of mine? It's so ethereal at this point.
Well, it's where
so
I think like
out
close
there.
tribalism is really helpful versus like, you know, it's weird because collectivism and large tribalism becomes really divisive. But close tribalism, like our food, our deep connections, I think is really like super empowering and powerful, you know?
Right.
And then a network of close tribalism that is respecting in between those nodes somehow. I mean, it's almost like we're seeing in the United States that different communities just want different things. This is not one nation. This is many nations.
Well, and that's the world. I mean, that's the world. And that's that nature of ideologicalness of humans, right?
Right.
Like
that's something I'm deeply missing from at least my idealism with tribalism is like that there's one story that we're all working towards together. We have an origin story. We came from the same stars or whatever it is. Like, I think we've got such different stories, and then we're arguing over, like, for me, I wrote this paper in college around the American dream being dead, and it's still not something that's talked about very much. The orientation that we have as Americans is towards finding something that we're good at and then doing that and then being able to afford a good life and happiness, and that dream is kind of dead because it's ignoring our place in the ecosystem. Like, that's a selfish dream. That does not lead to our our future children's children.
But I think that's also a story, though, too,
Absolutely.
that there's plenty of people who actually come here seeking and fulfilling that dream, too, though, right?
Right,
So
but
it's
the
like
dream itself, you're right, I'm just saying that, like, we need to dream bigger at this point. Like, there's still people actively pursuing that dream, but that same dream is perpetuating
But
a
the being
problem.
dead of the dream is for yourself, right? Like, it's like a, you know, and I get that, because like I was talking about, when I loved the beach and the movies I watched, it really kind of fulfilled that belief, you know, like in America and in that. And maybe it's transmuting the dream, maybe it's recognizing that's different for everyone in ways too, but the core energy is the same. You know? It's complicated, it's nuanced. I think.
It is.
For me, like, there's the sense of people, like, even people who are working in consciousness thinking that this is some game that we're playing. Like, oh, this is a game of figuring out this VR system and whatever. Like, there's some sense of what's really real. Like, where's their sense of stewardship and responsibility as life protectors, as these beings that are stewarding people's space, life. Like, this sense of, like, in my bones, like, I'm here to be a protector of life itself, and I'm not seeing that in my daily life. I'm not seeing that in the American dream of people that are my politicians aren't.
We're not seeing that in our leaders. We're not seeing that.
Yeah, so there's something that's really missing for me
as presently as they could.
But I think that is that embodied, right? Like expressing itself. It's like the ego is expressing itself. Like the ego of America is expressing itself on all sides right now, right? Like, see,
the ego is really springing up. I mean, on a meta level, right? Yeah, that's true. Right now, it's like kicking and screaming.
Well, think of like
to
the
be
Hunger
heard.
Games, right?
Yeah.
And remember the portrayal of like the elites and the politicians, and they're like that now. Like, you see them, how they're talking and all of them. You know what I mean? There's just really
it's almost like cartoon. Like, it's gotten
for
so
sure. Well, and because people have been
exaggerated,
conditioned to that. Like, you know, I haven't watched the news pretty much, you know, most of my entire life. But when you've been watching in reality TV, you know, like, people actually were conditioned toward it. Because I see something like, how do they not watch that and be like, what's that behavior? Is that you know? But I think people have been conditioned.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's deconditioning ourselves.
Right. That's what when I take breaks from social media, or I go out in the
essential,
woods for a month, or I do whatever, and I look at my family, my friends, like an older version of myself, I'm like, whoa, like, there's such a heavy level of conditioning that, like, even 4 days out in the woods starts to break habits, patterns. Like, cell phones, all of a sudden, like, the ringing and the vibrating are so intrusive in my nervous system.
Right.
It's so disruptive. Like blue light, all the things. Looking at a computer screen after being gone from one for 3 days is like, oh, this is not helping the way that my mind and my heart works.
So there is a lot of hypnosis happening with all of us. We're actually very hypnotized.
Absolutely.
Like, this is like a deep level of hypnotism that we're in. It feels that way.
And then I'm seeing two hypnotized parties say who's more hypnotized rather than be like, well, and I want to turn that mirror back around and be like, how am I hypnotized right now? What do I think is the truth, and how could that be totally wrong right now?
Well, and I think it's the us and them mentality. Which, that's what's been reinforced. Because when we are in that state, we're very easy to control. And that, I think, we see right now You know, when we're in a state of division,
Uh-huh.
because a state of division creates fear, and then now people are not actually hugging. You know, see, I mean, my friend he's a doctor and he works with patients and doing ketamine therapy, and he's had people come in who haven't been around another person for 6 months.
Right.
You know, and that
Wow,
right
that's
there.
real.
And you want to talk about something being detrimental to the immune system? That is detrimental to the immune system. You know,
Maybe
that
more
will make people
so.
sick. Oh, more so. Yeah, more so than, you know, getting sick. I mean, because that's like the core. It's not like a pathogen and a reaction, because it's actually destabilizing the terrain. You know, I'm more about the terrain versus like, oh, there's this dangerous thing that's coming to get me. It's like, is my body in a state, is the terrain in the state to handle these things? But when we're disconnected, we lose that.
Right.
Right.
And
You know.
just connecting that to what I guess I was trying to articulate is like in somatic psychology, like one of the first things that you want to give someone, or in a survival situation in the wilderness, is a sense of orientation. Like before you're building the fire, you're getting the food, or you're lost, like you need to orient. What's actually important first? What's the first thing that's going to kill me? Like you need to have a sense of orientation before you take a step towards any sort of action.
Right.
And I think
Right.
like the point with the dream is like we lack orientation as a collective, so there's a natural division because there's the pursuit of what exactly?
Yeah.
The pursuit of making sure my ends are getting, like my needs are getting met, or like we don't have a collective orientation towards the pursuit of.
And
how
now
are we
people don't even
honoring
have
this
not
life
even their
thing
individual
together?
orientation either, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
collective, you know,
Yeah,
'cause it's
exactly.
spread out.
So those are questions that I don't have answers to, that I'm just kind of like living into right now.
But something you're illuminating, I think that's really important, is just like taking self-responsibility is something I hear you saying. Is just like actually pausing enough to look at yourself right now and like not looking outside into all these circles of what's the media saying, what's happening in Washington, D.C., what's like, whoa, dial it back. What's going on inside you, me, us right now, the compass.
I agree with that. And where I'd argue with myself too is like again, coming back into the tricky area of even having the conversation around privilege of like, it is a privilege to sit and wait and watch and look at something.
Right.
And there's different stages and different things where something's going to be more important to some groups of people, where it's like, that's an existential question. When's the time to take action? When's the time to stand up for, like, you've got a thing with masks more so than I do. I'm still sitting back and watching the parade and be like, interesting. Certain people are like, fuck that. This is my life. I'm on the streets. And I'm like, neither one's like necessarily right or wrong. Some people think it is from their perspective, but like it is a privilege to sit back and watch a situation and not take action right away. And then when is the
Is it
time
also
where
a
the thing's
blessing?
knocking at your door?
Is it
Well,
also
it's-
a blessing to do
Yeah,
that?
that's good.
It's a
language
privilege
too.
and it's
Yeah.
a blessing.
Yeah,
right?
it's a blessing and a curse too. It's like you can. That's the thing about reality right now. You
multiple-
can put so many words on top of
Yeah.
it, and those stories are all true and false.
I think that word for me is just been
discombobulated.
used to devalue a lot, so that's why I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is our language.
Which is
right? It's like-
disempowerment too, right? You're right. Privilege is a real
right.
thing. Like we walk through the world as a white-bodied male, like with just a totally different landscape of experience.
Well, I think part of me
Like,
too. I don't mind because I don't feel disempowered. Like I don't using that word privilege and just being able to talk about it. Whoever is on the other side listening to this or having those thoughts, I want to have that conversation with them. I don't feel shame around my privilege. I don't feel shame around my
But it
blessings.
is a shame though when you say, for example, the whole garden thing. You say you devalued it, because to me that's shame. Like you devalued your experience in sharing that. And I've just seen that too. Like I was at my house once watching Into the Wild. Remember the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she ends up telling me, oh, well, he was just a privileged white, but and basically devalued his journey and struggle, and that's why I brought up the whole that we all experience pain maximally. And obviously, there are different cultural factors to look at. I just think there's that aspect of it that ends up. It's like, well, what about his pain? What about? And it turns out, that story is very trauma. There's a lot of trauma because the second book came out about that. Yeah, where people are, he's just an entitled
that is
person.
true.
You know?
That is true. It's just like where there's a relativity. Okay.
Just had a call come in. Part 2. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, if you were talking about something that was really traumatic for you, and you're like sharing this in this circle or this triangle with us, and I'm like, you're talking about maybe like something traumatic that happened to you as a kid with an uncle, and I'm like, man, I grew the best squash this year. It's just like, it's relative. I'm like, oh, that sucks, but like, man, I had the best day ever. It would like, it's like, that's not sensitive to your experience and relative to the thing. So I'm just like in the social circle of all these people, like fucking so stuck in trauma, like they don't. if I'm celebrating my garden, like I want to celebrate it in a way that I know is going to be received. I don't want to talk to you if you're not going to listen to me.
But
so
you
there's
should
that
not
relativity.
celebrate it because other people have paid.
Just might celebrate it somewhere
You
else.
shouldn't- yeah, right. They're like being sensitive to that, but not shameful about.
But if it's like your social
Right.
media that's about your life and you, I mean,
Right.
you know, you portray,
True.
you know, you growing a garden is a beautiful thing. Like I look and go, oh great, that's so awesome. Not be like, oh, look at him showing his garden. You know what I mean? Like,
I hear that.
But there are people who think like that. But I think that is a part of, again, that's that us and them, you know, us and them mentality.
And I get,
divides, you know.
that's true. And that is a lot of hesitation. It's like I'm not trying to, like I guess I don't think I can take a picture of my garden and feel like I'm not making a political statement right now. And I don't want to. It's not worth it for me.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
And that's part of that us and them narrative. What you're saying.
It's your sister.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Hey, Morris.
Oh, is she calling you?
Yeah. My sister Morris is coming over, but yeah. But to kind of like capstone this off, like not that it can be.
Actually, capital.
Yeah.
Especially you.
Oh yeah. I stepped in some like coyote scat on the way, but yeah. But what's interesting about this time is because of the depth of surveillance capitalism and the way that there is data points on every single person, their political desires, their sort of individualistic desires, their external, like what they want in a nation desires, or at least what they don't want.
Yeah.
To me, I'm just like, okay, to get solutionary with it, we live in one nation that's made up of a bunch of disparate experiential viewpoints. And one of the best things that artificial intelligence is good at is to take all of that landscape of variables and give you like 100 proposed plans. Oh, maybe
but unfortunately, that's the double-edged sword, right? Because unfortunately, if it were, again, it's how do we utilize that? Because it's, you know, is it being utilized for that? You know,
No,
and again,
but
I think it should be utilized for
could.
the good. Yeah, exactly.
We could. I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if the motivations. Well, I'm sure
There's some people.
There's some people,
and there are
good people
with agendas,
doing that. There's good people doing that. And so my hope is that there's like on the pragmatic level, like data science, like the best practices being used right now in an era where we have so much capability to create solutionary thinking and implementation.
Yeah.
That like why we don't have like convergence, whether it's digital or physical, to really like, you know, our government should be funding that because they don't know what the F they're doing right now.
Yeah, well, that's
like,
the ego. Did it stop?
Yeah, it did. I just restarted it. But I just wanted, like, at this final place, which is where we are right now in this political landscape, in this spiritual landscape, in this social landscape, is that we just had an election last night. Everyone's looking still to leaders to sort this out, and knowing that those leaders are unfortunately controlled by corporate energies, which their well has been poisoned. They're locked around the wrist with fiduciary duty. That's a runaway train.
And also the media that's portraying it, and that's the Wetiko, right? That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then where do we find ourselves in that? You know.
Right.
That's the question.
And so, like, it's like some.
That's why I think that, you know, shared humanity, I guess. You know.
Shared humanity.
Yeah.
Shared humanity being at the energetic.
And more hugs.
Like, more hugs like these. More hugs like these. Oh. More hugs and like from hugs and from shared campfire spaces coming up with solutionary visions around what we do about our water system. What do we do about our political system? What do we do about like the runaway train of like surveillance capitalism that isn't honoring people? What do we do with like the Citizens United issue of like, you know, having, you know, corporations basically finance, you know, everything about our political system. It sucks to be ashamed to say America.
Yeah, but I'm not. But
I'm not even a nationally minded person.
It's a lens issue, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and I think we've had so much in the zeitgeist, especially on a certain side, to focus on the shadow. Only viewing through the shadow, because there's always both.
Yeah.
Just like there's always the light to America, right? But there's a lot of light, and it's like maybe one side views too much through the light, and one side, you know, the right's more through the light, and then the left is all through the dark, right? So you have these two, but we need, again,
and to not alienate each other, and then just create this like divisive civil war energy, which
and
is
that's
yeah. So that is going to take like we got to bring it together culturally. That's like a cultural shift too.
Yeah.
To start to be one of taking self-responsibility, saying, hey, this is where I've been projecting this onto these other people. I'm willing to.
That's what takes that like looking at oneself in the mirror.
Right.
Yeah.
It does.
And that's the challenge, I think, right now for people.
That is the challenge.
And with collective reinforcement. So how do we, and maybe that means that we get everything goes dark, and then we get to look inward. Right, if
that's what it takes,
and everything, and sometimes I
mean, if
wonder
that's what it takes, unless we can stand up and like come to that before it gets to that, that's the choice that we actually have right now. Like, we have that choice. We actually have that choice to wake up. Like, what will it take to wake you up? What will it take to wake us
keep
up?
Waking up
And keep waking. It's not a one-time thing. To actually make the leap.
I'm woke now,
Yeah.
Well, it takes, I think, cultivating resilience.
Yeah.
We have to be resilient right now, and that's the work.
Yeah. So it's going to take some level of like pragmatic strategy
and self-care.
Because
it starts here in how we relate to our fellow humans. Because if we can't talk to our neighbor, if we're canceling this person on Facebook because we don't agree, like
echo chamber.
And that ricochets out. That's that goes out into the world, and that is what we see right now. So the more people can my friend said there was an image where a Democratic Republican reached across and they bumped fists or held hands, and she's like, "Oh, it just gave me chills."
Oh my God! Can we just get lots and lots of that? Like, what does it? I want to go do that. Like, I don't know. Like, I think that this is like that deep humanity is actually like the hugest desire people are that can be unlocked in people. And you're right. We've been like conditioned leading up to this with these masks and with this like stay distant, emotionally distant, socially distant.
Well, and it started back in 2015 too, that people started editing people out, that did not think the way they did, right? And, another thing I was thinking about recently is the hatred, because hatred divides, right?
Right.
And so a lot of people they've hated Trump so much for the past 4 years. And how we all naturally like to commiserate, when you want to they could just turn on the news, right? Turn on the TV, and it reinforced this hate. And hate is hate. Doesn't matter who it's directed at, right? If you're hating, and I think it hurts, it eats at the human soul, and I think that's what we see on display right now, unfortunately, a lot of that.
So we got to turn it around, more love and solutionary thinking. Like, it's going to have to be pragmatic too. It's not just like kumbayaing in a circle.
We don't want a spiritual bypass.
Right.
We want to truly do the work and recognize the shadow. Because I think a lot of times it's like kumbaya is like, oh no, everything's great, and we just and it takes work too.
Right, and then we're gonna have to create a sharing of resources, a new system. But luckily we are living in the era of such tremendous abundance. Mm-hmm. Actually, if we grab a hold of it, we have like everything from robotics to all these things. Yeah. We have everything. It's literally, are we gonna squander this moment? Yeah. Because we got everything right now as a humanity.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just sad too on a pragmatic level. Like I don't want to. I was voting triggered me so much because I'm just like, I don't even care at this point about the leaders. I want to vote on the plan. Mm-hmm. Give me a plan and I'll vote on that. And then let me also splinter off and say, I like everything except that part. I want to mix and match a puzzle patchwork of local, regional, and national plans.
I do think we're moving towards that, though, because with that great revealing, right?
In real time, not once every four effing years.
Well, no, but I think in general, by seeing the problem of the broke, and how both sides of the polarities are really playing out the same. It's the same. They're just the same thing. It's like the same coin flipping, forever. I've been thinking a lot lately how, empathy, the flip side of empathy is sociopathy. And I feel like that's like the weaponized empathy. I see that now in the world, how easily, that's kind of think of the witch burning, right? The trial, where it's burn the witch. When you flip that narrative, right, and someone's protecting people, get that,
right,
It's just, it's really interesting to think of but if that's coming to the surface, we have an opportunity to heal.
it's good it's coming to the surface. It's definitely coming to
brutal.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
But that's where the healing starts. Like you and I know that
recognizing
work, like whether it's like just transcendental meditation or what have you. When you're doing that inner work, it's going to bring difficult shit up to process, and that's where you actually get to heal. So as a nation, we're going through a medicine journey. We're going through it, and it's alchemy, right? The deep alchemy, and you can't. And it was all under the surface before. It's not necessarily worse now than it was then.
No. So this is we're seeing.
We're just getting to see it.
The ego, the game, all this stuff.
Yeah. So I'm grateful to Trump. I'm grateful to the corrupt politicians. I'm grateful to the ones that are actually playing. It's like an actor that plays the part, so that you get to identify that aspect of consciousness that's actually been hidden all this time. Has been the root of so much. Disempowerment in our society. So now we get to face it head on. We get to confront it head on. We have social media. We got media freaking everywhere.
Overload.
Well,
we have a lot of external, and the other day I've been doing a thing where I keep my phone in my workshop, and so I have to go through going to bed, and in the morning, no phone every day, right? And it's interesting to realize how much my internal dialogue begins. Because when we're constantly having external other people's dialogue, right? It's all external dialogue. When we're overloaded with it, we don't actually get to have the internal dialogue, which is where we think, well, my sister, we may not have this agree on this, but God, there's a part of me, I really miss her. And maybe we can look past, but I don't think hate, you don't we're divided, that's feeding that. So I think when we get that internal dialogue, which I think does take dopamine detox and, getting away from, again, it's a double-edged sword, right? We have so much opportunity
for isolation,
but
If people are using it for self-reflection.
Yes, again, it's the tools. They're fantastic tools.
Yep.
You can take a hammer and you can fix something, or you can smash yourself in the head with it, right? It's all about how do we, what's our intention?
Right.
I think that's the thing too, is intention versus outcome. If your intention is something, but then the outcome is something totally different,
right?
Then you got to change a game plan and strategize. So, yeah.
All right, one more hug. Thanks for being a part of this. This is a container.
Want a hug?
Yeah, I want to hug. Oh, yeah, there it is. Well, yeah. I do like to acknowledge this, because this is not in this space on a spiritual level, on an energetic level. Though I can't see your eyes, I can feel them. In this space, your spirit is here. I hope that you can. I wish you could sit right here and talk. This is a time where we do need to come together, like Sebastian said so many times. And so wherever you can come together, wherever you can create that shared humanity, please do it right now. This is so crucial, even if that's just with your mom or your brother or your spouse or whatever, your children. It's a time for that, and from that everything else can emerge. If there's something you feel called to do, and it's outside of your, we have these professions, we have these skills, we actually are a brilliant nation full of really incredible, extraordinary people that are looking at these people that are making all the decisions for us, is this the best we got? And that's intense. That's an intense thing to grapple with. But this election does not decide the next 4 years. Don't give your power to that. We will build the systems. We will write the ways so that whatever plan is really going to be support and empower the people. We live at the most empowered. We can create a new platform for making decisions like that. I mean, this is well within the reach of humanity right now. So don't get carried away that this election decides the fate of humanity, because it does not. You do. We do. We really do. And this government is in service to us, whether they've forgotten that, and some systematic shifts need to be recalibrated so that is true.
Or we don't need government.
We need something we need some glue to hold together millions of people in a complex society. So respect to that. But it's maybe it's just the best. It just is what it is right now. It's in this meta organism which the Earth is. which has organs and organelles. One of them, which is the United States and all of its little compartments. It's like, it's sick, but it's doing what it can to move the blood through. But we get to be innovative cells and create, heal it. And so that's going to take all of us being innovative, and it's well within the capacity of humanity to fix this, to heal this. And it's going to happen on the individual level first.
For sure. That's where it needs to happen.
First, now. Blessings.